Forge Master of Fuses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476, Speaking Frankly. Burke Solomon panicked all of a sudden, and he used all the power he could, but he still couldn't find out the reason. Perhaps, it's not that no one has found anything, but that some people have not announced their findings, and even helped to cover up some traces. For example, Comrade Zhao Jin looked at Burke Solomon's anxious and headless appearance, and raised the corners of his mouth, with a hint of sarcasm. What is the meaning of the righteous will have many supporters, while the unrighteous will have few supporters? Zhao Jin has truly seen it today. Of course, if Mr. Burke Solomon didn't come to him in a hurry, Zhao Jin might be happier. Mr. Solomon, why are you looking for me? Zhao Jin's words were not very pleasant to hear, and Solomon Burke's face immediately fell. He raised his hand gently, and in his hands was a test tube with nothing but a green leaf. Excuse me, Mr. Zhao, what is this? Zhao Jin's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. Mr. Solomon is a master of pharmacy, how could he not recognize a plant? To me, it looks a bit like matter that can be found everywhere on the planet. But Mr. Solomon will not test me with such a thing. How about, Mr. Solomon, point me in a direction? Looking at Zhao Jin, who didn't have any flaws at all, Burke Solomon couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Mr. Zhao is not wrong, this is indeed a leaf of matter. However, this leaf is a little different. I found it at the scene of the accident, and it has a small drop of paralysis agent for mutant creatures, which can have a corresponding effect on genetically modified humans. Zhao Jin said and showed a look of sudden enlightenment. The old saying that those who work with their minds rule others, and those who work with their hands are ruled by others is really true. Our group of people only know how to use brute force, and we searched for a long time but found nothing. Mr. Solomon just went to the scene of the accident and immediately found the key. My admiration. My admiration. No wonder Mr. Jim Field handed over the management power to Mr. Solomon. Zhao Jin's nonsense was very powerful, but unfortunately it did not work on Burke Solomon. He took a step forward, came in front of Zhao Jin, put the test tube in front of Zhao Jin, pointed to the root, and sneered, "It doesn't matter what variety this leaf is, and it doesn't matter what kind of medicine it is stained with. What matters is that this leaf did not fall off naturally, nor was it dragged and dropped by someone, but was cut off by a sharp blade. Near this leaf, there is a bunch of matter that was cut in half, but there is only this leaf stained with medicine nearby. Mr. Zhao, do you understand what I mean now?" Zhao Jin raised his eyebrows. What does Mr. Solomon mean? Seeing Zhao Jin's stubborn look, Solomon almost died. He took back the test tube and threw it into the space buckle, then sneered at Zhao Jin. It is obvious that there is a traitor among us, Zhao Jin said without comment. Just because of this bunch of matter and a leaf, Mr. Solomon is going to suspect his own brother? This is too much, Burke Solomon sneered. No matter what you do to a traitor, it's not excessive? Zhao Jin dusted off the non-existent dust on his body and said coldly, in this case, let's be frank. Mr. Solomon knows the best pharmaceutical experts here. I wonder who you are suspecting. Chapter 477 Attack Again. Rubiaceae can be found everywhere, and it is not difficult to find a sharp blade that can cut Rubiaceae. Taking Rubiaceae away is even easier. However, the potion that Burke Solomon is afraid of, is not something that everyone can make. Burke Solomon wanted to put the blame on him, but Zhao Jin could return the blame to him. Moreover, he also threw out such a thorny question, which made Burke Solomon so angry that he pointed at his nose and said, You. Zhao Jin slapped his fingertips and said coldly, one finger is pointed at others, and 4 fingers are pointed at yourself. Mr. Solomon is such a smart person, he must know it. No matter how many years older I am than you, I still have to be polite. You say, right. The 4 words taking advantage of one's age were used vividly by Zhao Jin. Burke Solomon, who is usually eloquent, was at a loss when he met such a person who pretended to be stupid and unreasonable. Zhao Jin, wait for me. Seeing Burke Solomon's frustrated look, Zhao Jin didn't feel the joy of victory in his heart. Instead, he felt an endless emptiness after waking up from a beautiful dream. Was he out of his mind back then? He actually believed in the nonsense about eternal life, and was still confused for so many years, doing so many stupid things as an accomplice to the evil. Really, so stupid. Zhao Jin silently wiped away the tear from the corner of his eye, took a deep breath, and turned back to his room. He had more important things to do than to feel sad about the passing of time. Since Burke Solomon came to him, he would not do it without a purpose. He must have discovered something. He must find that person before Burke Solomon. There are not many brothers with him, and they can't stand Burke Solomon's tossing. Zhao Jin and Burke Solomon are racing against time. Unfortunately, this game has not ended yet, and their internal fight was temporarily shelved because of the same accident. Yes. As soon as the Night Owls returned, Songsi controlled them to attack. The target was clear, just opposite the last attack site. Because of the last attack, the entire planet was under martial law. No matter how good the concealment of the Night Owls was, many people still saw the moment when they opened the hatch and dropped the potion. There were too many witnesses, so many that Zhao Jin didn't know how to cover up for him, so he simply handed the filmed footage to Burke Solomon without covering it up. The truth of the accident was finally revealed, but Burke Solomon was not happy. He looked at the video of the Night Owls, whose true bodies were partially exposed due to the thick fog, and slammed the table. They flew right under our noses, but you didn't notice it. Zhao Jin, what else can you do besides relying on your seniority? These words hurt his heart. Even a strong man like Zhao Jin couldn't help but reach out and touch his aching chest. Burke Solomon did not let him go, and continued, Mr. Zhao, what's wrong? If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me. For me, getting a heart transplant is just a matter of minutes. I'm happy to serve you. Heart transplant? What kind of heart? A cold mechanical heart? Or a mutant heart? What will he look like after the transplant? A machine without emotions, or a half-human, half-beast monster? Zhao Jin glanced at the complacent Burke Solomon, his eyes full of sadness. I'm in good health, don't worry about me, Mr. Solomon. Mr. Solomon should still worry about whether the other side will have the next wave of attacks, and when it will be. Chapter 478 Hurting Each Other. Zhao Jin's words made Burke Solomon's face darken. Since Mr. Zhao is fine, please think of a solution. I don't want this kind of enemy to fly right under our noses again. Zhao Jin pointed at the Night Owl, which was partially exposed due to the thick fog, and sneered, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be in danger in 100 battles. Mr. Solomon didn't even give me a complete photo of the appearance of this aircraft, but he wanted me to come up with a countermeasure. I'm afraid this is a bit too much to ask. Burke Solomon supported the table, his eyes narrowed into line. Others may not be able to do it. But Mr. Zhao, a genius who is rare in the mecha casting industry in 500 years, will definitely be able to do it. The two people's eyes met in midair, with a bit of lightning and thunder. Seeing Burke Solomon's arrogant look, Zhao Jin raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Mr. Solomon is really good at provoking me. If I were 10 or 20 years younger, I might have really been fooled. Burke Solomon's eyes flashed with surprise. What does Mr. Zhao mean? Zhao Jin spread his hands and said very simply, I have been locked up here for so many years, I almost forgot that while you are making progress, others are not idle either. 3 cobblers are better than Zhuge Liang. A genius who fights alone is not better than an ordinary person who works together. Perhaps, you who return to this diamond star later than me, have a deeper understanding. Zhao Jin glanced at his space buckle with a hint of meaning. Burke Solomon's whole body stiffened, and many scenes involuntarily emerged in his mind. Zhang Awaihu suddenly woke up, various news reports about the expeditionary army killing people everywhere, his embarrassment of leaving the alliance by escaping death, and the paralysis potion on the matter in his space buckle. Damn it. I can't analyze the ingredients, let alone find the antidote for the paralysis potion. Burke Solomon felt his eyes go dark, and a sweet and fishy taste rose in his throat. The 4 words deeper experience kept exploding in his head, almost making him collapse. Looking at Burke Solomon holding his head and escaping from reality like an ostrich, Zhao Jin couldn't help but curl up a sneer at the corner of his mouth. It's true that Zhao Jin is known as a genius in the mecha casting industry that is rare in 500 years, but Burke Solomon is not weak either. Known as Jim Field's successor and the last hope of genetic research, he has now fallen into this state. It's really pitiful that there must be something hateful about a pitiful person. The person who knows you best will always be your opponent. Zhao Jin is not afraid of stabbing each other and hurting each other. People who have nothing are not afraid of losing. Zhao Jin glanced at his optical brain, calculated the time, and a smile appeared in his eyes. If he guessed correctly, the 3rd attack would come soon. This time, He was sure that he could get a complete picture of the appearance of this aircraft. I just don't know what Mr. Burke Solomon will think of his progress. Glancing at Burke Solomon, who was still immersed in his own emotions and unable to come out, Zhao Jin smiled with a bad taste, calculated the time, and waited for the arrival of the third attack. Zhao Jin's calculation ability has always been good. The night owl controlled by Song Si came to him on time and released the third wave of paralysis potions at a 90-degree angle away from the two attacks. I don't know if it is lucky or unfortunate. There are no permanent personnel in the area where the third attack occurred. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479, Attack, Attack Again. I don't know whether it's lucky or unfortunate. There are no permanent personnel in the area where the third attack took place. Because that is Burke Solomon's laboratory. Zhao Jin glanced at Burke Solomon beside him, with a little regret in his eyes. It would be great if this guy didn't come to pick a fight with me, but stayed in the laboratory. However, although he thought so in his heart, Zhao Jin would not say it out loud, but pretended to be respectful and put the complete appearance photo of the aircraft that Burke Solomon needed in front of him. When Burke Solomon's eyes were on him, Zhao Jin said jokingly in a professional tone, I have done my best to get the complete exterior photos of the aircraft. Judging from the appearance, it is completely out of the traditional aircraft design framework that you brought back 10 years ago. It is a brand new model. Compared with the latest model 10 years ago, its flight speed is more than 23% and its concealment is more than 27%. According to data analysis, this is only 37% related to the exterior design. The exterior analysis report will be uploaded to your communicator in 10 minutes. As for the internal analysis, Zhao Jin glanced at Burke Solomon and smiled slightly. Please provide the real thing as soon as possible, Mr. Solomon. Before Burke Solomon could speak, Zhao Jin added, a friendly reminder. According to my data analysis, the next attack is likely to be within 2 hours. If nothing unexpected happens, the target should be the opposite of the third attack, which is where you and I are. After speaking, Zhao Jin turned around and ran towards the direction of the first attack. Burke Solomon looked at his back and the door swaying in the wind. His face turned livid. Zhao Jin's pile of data sounded impressive, but in fact, after 3 attacks, most people could see that it was useless. The only thing that Burke Solomon agreed with was that if nothing unexpected happened, the next target of attack would most likely be the land under his feet. Without thinking about how to explain to the people above, Burke Solomon hurriedly stuffed everything he could into the space buckle and fled his office before the next attack. The fourth attack came as expected and accurately hit the position estimated by Zhao Jin, right above Burke Solomon's office. Burke Solomon aimed at the night owl, which was exposed in the thick fog, and pulled the trigger in his hand. After a light bang, an energy net suddenly appeared in the air. Unfortunately, the mesh of this energy net was too large and did not trap the petite night owl. Intercept. Intercept at all costs. Listening to Burke Solomon scream, Zhao Jin patted the non-existent dust on his clothes, looked at the thick smoke in the distance, and raised his arm helplessly. The palm-sized light gun was aimed at the last night owl, and fired a white light. The last night owl was like a wild goose that had left the flock, emitting black smoke and slowly falling. Zhao Jin sighed, and in everyone's horrified eyes, he slowly walked towards the direction where the night owl fell in the thick fog. Chapter 480, Confident. Only a brave man can go to a place where there are tigers. In an instant, Zhao Jin's aura was 2.8 meters high. Even Burke Solomon was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a moment. The argument that everything was put on Zhao Jin was obviously untenable. Burke Solomon's face suddenly became darker than the bottom of a pot. Zhao Jin's back gradually merged into the thick fog, and Burke Solomon's expression became more and more unpredictable. 1 step, 2 steps. Zhao Jin walked firmly and freely, and did not fall down as everyone guessed. Looking at the messy brothers around him, and then looking at Zhao Jin's back, Burke Solomon's mouth corners slightly raised. Mr. Zhao is so confident. Burke Solomon's words instantly stirred up 1,000 waves, and everyone looked at Zhao Jin with strange eyes. It's not their fault for thinking too much. It was really the 4 words confident and fearless from Burke Solomon's mouth that were too intriguing. Zhao Jin returned to the original place with the night owl and felt the strange looks from all directions. He didn't need to guess that Burke Solomon had tripped him up again. He curled his lips, found an empty place with no grass, threw a short metal plate over as a stool, put a tall metal block as a workbench, and put the toolbox in the space buckle up, and a simple open-air studio was formed. Facing the eyes from all directions, Zhao Jin sat down and started to study with the night owl in his hand. Zhao Jin was hailed as a genius in the mecha casting industry that is rare in 500 years, so he must have some real materials. The disassembly work that Kioxi could complete was like playing in Zhao Jin's hands. In just 10 minutes, the night owl, which was missing a wing, turned into a pile of parts, neatly placed on the temporary workbench in front of Zhao Jin. Looking at the fruits of his labor, Zhao Jin was not happy at all. The entire aircraft had 386 parts, from materials to structure and purpose, and he knew every one of them. There were even several that had his unique mark. These things, as expected, were all taken from the beast-shaped mecha released by Burke Solomon. The things he worked so hard to make actually returned to his hands in this way. If Burke Solomon knew about it, he would probably accuse him of aiding the enemy. However, he used his own spear to attack his own shield. The group of little guys on the opposite side were quite interesting. If he had the chance, he would like to have a competition with these little guys. While scanning the parts, Zhao Jin tried hard to use these parts to build a model in order to restore the night owl. He lived up to his reputation as a genius, and he really found it. However, when he placed the restored night owl in front of everyone, the fifth and sixth attacks had already ended. Everyone looked at the night owl, thinking about what Burke Solomon said, and looked at Zhao Jin with a strange expression. Zhao Jin played with his tools and said, "Why are you looking at me like that? I'm not Mr. Solomon, I won't beat around the bush. Just say what you want to say." Everyone looked at each other, and finally pushed a young man from the Zhao family out. The child named Zhao Yan scratched his head and asked cautiously, "Ancestor, that paralysis potion." Chapter 481 God Operation. Zhao Jin frowned at the hesitant way the child spoke. How could a good boy of the Zhao family become like this? Zhao Yan was timid to begin with, and when he saw Zhao Jin's expression, he almost cried. Only half of the words were left. Zhao Jin waited for a long time but didn't get the second half, so he simply gave up waiting and said bluntly, "You guys are not as old as your ancestor, but your eyes are worse than your ancestors. The planet is so big, and there are so many lively and active creatures. Are you so bold that you actually question your ancestor? If the tiger doesn't show its power, you think your ancestor is a sick cat?" Zhao Jin raised his hand and gave a brain-shaking blow. Zhao Yan shrank his neck and endured it. The aggrieved and confused look on his face made Zhao Jin's temples throb. If he looked at the stupid junior for a few more times, Zhao Jin felt that he might shorten his life. In order to live 2 more years, he waved his hand at Zhao Yan. "Go away. Go away." On one side was the brother who entrusted him with an important task, and on the other side was the angry old ancestor. The honest and unlucky child Zhao Yan felt that he was in a dilemma. Zhao Jin hinted very clearly. Zhao Yan was stupid, but it did not mean that all people were stupid. At least, his good brother Bachuan, after taking a look at the rabbits jumping around and the people lying on their backs in the distance, came to his senses. Looking at Zhao Yan standing there, looking around, and looking stupid without any idea, Bachuan could not help but sigh and wave to him. Zhao Yan seemed to have found his backbone, and ran towards Bachuan like a young swallow flying into the forest. "Chuanzi, what does the ancestor mean?" Bachuan looked at his sincere eyes and the sympathetic eyes around him, rubbed his temples, and explained in a low voice, "Don't worry. The rabbits are fine, and humans like you who are imported from the Alliance will be fine too." Zhao Yan patted his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good. That's good." As a man with a thick nerve, he was simply thankful and didn't notice the eyes around him that looked at him like a fool. Bachuan nodded to Zhao Jin, rubbed the head of this idiot, and dragged him away. There are not many simple idiots on this planet, and Bachuan felt that he had an obligation to protect rare species. Seeing his young generation being dragged away, Zhao Jin raised his eyebrows and muttered in a low voice, "Is this considered a fool's luck?" After saying that, Zhao Jin couldn't help laughing. Everyone has his best destination. As for the objects, Zhao Jin looked down at the night owl in his hand, and a wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Playing with the night owl in his hand, he slowly stood up, and under everyone's strange looks, he slowly put the thing back into his space buckle. After doing all this, he dusted off the non-existent dust on his body and walked slowly in the direction of Burke Solomon. When he put the newly assembled night owl in Burke Solomon's hand in front of everyone, he patted his shoulder fearlessly. "The rest is up to you." At that moment, Burke Solomon's face was like a kaleidoscope. At that moment, the air of the entire planet seemed to solidify. Zhao Jin, however, was like nothing had happened. He found an open place, tied a hammock, and dozed off. This godlike operation shocked everyone. Chapter 482 Shaken. Zhao Jin, who had put his mind at ease, lay on the hammock and fell asleep quickly, even snoring. This nonchalant look, accompanied by the snoring, reached everyone's ears. While everyone was straightening their chins, they looked at Burke Solomon with a subtle look. The snoring in the ears and the subtle looks around stimulated Burke Solomon. Zhao Jin had already shown his ability and successfully made his words a joke. As a genius, he didn't want to be left far behind and despised by others, so he had to show his true ability. Zhao Jin's talent lies in mecha casting and his talent lies in pharmacy. Zhao Jin took out an identical night owl. He could only convince the crowd by taking out the antidote for the paralysis potion. In a sense, the night owl was a challenge issued by Zhao Jin to him. Burke Solomon glared at Zhao Jin fiercely, holding the night owl he had just obtained, and walked towards his research room unwillingly. As if he felt Burke Solomon's sharp gaze, Zhao Jin on the hammock could not help but turn over. Then, he fell asleep again. Bajuan, who walked a long way with Zhao Yan in his arms, turned his head to look in Zhao Jin's direction and smiled. He didn't even need to lean on the wall when it came to getting angry. He admired Zhao Yan, the ancestor. It's not easy for Zhao Jin to live to this day. I don't know how this old senior will respond when Burke Solomon comes out of the laboratory. Just thinking about it, Bajuan couldn't help but get excited and rubbed his hands like a fly. Watching the fun? Of course I won't mind. Especially Burke Solomon's fun. Bajuan is not the only one who wants to watch the fun. 50% of the people on this planet are staring at Zhao Jin and Burke Solomon's movements. As for what kind of thoughts they have, it's hard to say. Although everyone is curious about the final outcome of this game, not everyone is as fearless as Zhao Jin. As you get older, you naturally have a lot of problems. Not everyone is like Zhao Jin, who insists on maintaining the original appearance. There are not a few who have replaced one or two mechanical organs, and there are even more who have cloned one or two organs. The original imported from the Alliance can jump around under the effect of the drug, but it does not mean that they can. Most of their operations were performed by Jim Field and Burke Solomon, a master and apprentice. They really can't guarantee whether these two experts in genetic research have done anything during the operation or to mix anything. Seeing that the next wave of attacks is coming, Zhao Jin has no signs of waking up, and Burke Solomon has no reaction. The onlookers have to scatter and look for what they think is the best hiding place. The attack came as expected. Again and again. As time went on, everyone's expectations of Burke Solomon dropped lower and lower, and even evolved into disappointment. Pessimism was spreading, and the negative effects of genetic modification were presented to them for the first time. The truth that was deliberately concealed by Jim Field and Burke Solomon was revealed by Song Si. The truth is so unbearable. The more it is concealed, the more it is magnified. It even has the tendency to turn into fear. It silently shakes everyone's beliefs. Chapter 483 Missing. The contest between geniuses has always been a piece of cake. Zhao Jin had just shot down a night owl, and Tang Fan, who had finally climbed up from the sickbed, took Koxi to mass-produce 24 night owls, exclusively for Song Si to drive. With Tang Fan's friendly assistance, Song Si immediately changed his usual style and divided his troops into 3 groups, carrying the same amount of paralysis potion, and marched towards Diamond Star at the same time. With 3-pronged approach, the paralysis potion that was dispersed covered most of Diamond Star. The best hiding place that most people tried hard to find did not serve as a hiding place at all. All the genetically modified people between 3 meters underground and 30 meters above the ground were caught without exception. Among them, a large number of people had undergone organ transplants under the master and apprentice Jim Field and Burke Solomon. Their worries became a reality. They had to wake up from the dream of immortality, and the beliefs in the hearts of many people collapsed. On Diamond Star, there was crying. However, a cheer rang out from Weru Star not far away. Ms. Tao Kinxi, who had locked herself in the laboratory for a long time, ran out laughing, holding up a test tube that was as ordinary as it could be. I found it. I found it. Her crazy look made everyone's eyes hurt. After all, They were roommates for a few days, and Song Tong really couldn't bear to let her sing a one-man show. She poked her back teeth, walked forward, patted Tao Qingxi on the shoulder, and asked, "What did you find?" Tao Qingxi put the test tube in front of Song Tong and said proudly, "Of course I found the formula for the antidote." "Antidote?" Song Tong's face sternly, and he held Tao Qingxi's hand tightly. "Tell me carefully." Tao Qingxi really turned on his light brain and pulled Song Tong to mutter. Obviously, the two people were speaking the official terms of the alliance, and every word was pronounced standardly, and everyone could understand it, but when they were connected together, everyone could only shake their heads. It is impossible to understand a conversation between genius pharmacists, and it is impossible in this lifetime. However, Song Si did not care about these. When he confirmed from Song Tong that Tao Qingxi's prescription was highly feasible and accurate, he simply ignored the confusing professional terms in the middle. Major General Song Si organized the first counterattack after they came to this place at lightning speed. The Night Owl, which had just returned, led the way with paralysis potions, and the Black Level Mecha team composed of elites from both sides followed closely and landed on the Diamond Star. Diamond Star, immersed in sadness, fell quickly before it had time to organize a resistance. The whole process went smoothly beyond Song Si's imagination. Even Xia Adao began to mutter, "If I had known that it was so weak, I would have counterattacked directly. What are we waiting for now? Isn't it better to go back earlier?" Song Si commanded the aircraft to scan the faces of the captives, staring at the screen with sharp eyes, not relaxing at all. His brows were furrowed tighter and tighter until they were wrinkled into shape, and his lips were pursed into line. Among the more than 200 prisoners, there was not a single familiar face. No Jim Field, no Ulakami, even Burke Solomon was nowhere to be found. Chapter 484. Song Si did not give up and read it again. Nothing. Still nothing. Song Si was about to turn around and read it for the third time when Emil Field, who was standing behind him, spoke. "No need to look. There is indeed no Jim Field, Ulakami and Burke Solomon in here." Song Si couldn't help but sucking his teeth after hearing this. "Then where can they go?" Emil Field sneered. "Jim Field cherishes his life the most. He will prepare more than 3 escape routes wherever he goes. Who knows where he will go?" Song Si couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "If I remember correctly, Jim Field should be your biological father." Calling him by his name, Emil Field raised a hint of sarcasm at the corner of his mouth. "Major General Song, who doesn't know each other between us? The family scandal of the Field family has probably spread all over the capital star. Major General Song is the son of the marshal. It is impossible that he doesn't know about it. You know what's going on between Jim Field and me. Why bother to act in front of me?" Song Si raised his eyebrows. "There are so many rumors about the Field family in the capital star. Which one are you referring to, Mr. Emil?" Seeing Song Si asking questions knowing the answer, Emil Field wanted to hide him. He narrowed his eyes and sneered. "What do you think?" Song Si touched his chin, pretending to be thinking hard, and said inadvertently, "Could it be that Mr. Emil's 3 brothers, together with the 3rd generation of the Field family, Mr. Olaf Field, are not the result of natural breeding, but the research results of Mr. Jim Field? Is this true?" Emil Field glanced at Song Si and sneered. "It's as true as the news that your Ms. Yao raised you as a daughter since you were a child. Come on. Hurt each other. Who doesn't have a little black history?" Song Si, whose black history was dug up, couldn't help but grind his back teeth. "I wonder what kind of genes Mr. Emil has in his body? Will he be affected by the paralysis potion? Otherwise, I'll let the people below pay attention. This paralysis potion does not distinguish between enemies and friends. If Mr. Emil is accidentally injured, then I will be guilty." Emil Field's face is not as thick as Song Si's, and his black history is more than Song Si, who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. In addition, he just accidentally handed his handle to Song Si. Hearing this piercing remark, Emil Field felt sick. There is no way to win the quarrel. I will never win the quarrel in this life. Emil Field stamped his feet, flicked his sleeves, and turned to leave. Halfway through, he remembered the purpose of his trip. He turned around unwillingly and growled at Song Si, "There is no face I am familiar with on this planet. It should be the same as the experimental planet, and it is also Jim Field's test site. It's just that this test site is of a higher level and the experimental products are more mature." After saying that, Emil Field left without looking back. Looking at Emil Field's back, Song Si rarely felt a trace of guilt. Of course, It was only for a moment. Soon, Song Si reacted and started a new round of deployment. Even if it was just a test site, it was Jim Field's test site. Even if he had to dig deep into the ground, he had to find some clues about Jim Field. Chapter 485 Despair. As for how to find him, Song Si tapped his own light computer and curled his lips. The next second, the photo of Burke Solomon was sent to all his subordinates. At the same time, the order to find Burke Solomon, even if they had to dig deep into the ground, was also issued to all places. Zion Adeo looked at Burke Solomon's familiar face, clicked his tongue, and raised his eyebrows. We don't know this genius of pharmacy. What's the point of looking at him? Why not show him this face? Maybe we can find some clues. The monkey on the side couldn't help laughing after hearing this. How do you know that our Major General Song didn't mean that? Zion Adeo was stunned at first, and then laughed. Why didn't I think of it? He patted his head, and really put the light computer in front of the captive beside him and asked. If it were in the Alliance, Burke Solomon would be just a famous genius of pharmacy. But on Diamond Star, Burke Solomon is the one with the strongest presence. He held regular meetings every now and then, speaking on behalf of Jim Field, announcing the progress of the project, awakening everyone's desire for immortality, and consolidating their beliefs. No one on the entire Diamond Star didn't know him. Those who pursue immortality are naturally afraid of death. Before Zion Adeo opened his mouth to ask, the captive spilled all the information he knew about Burke Solomon. The man had a lot of nonsense, which made Zion Adeo's head hurt. He had to summarize it, but there were only 2 sentences. First, Jim Field valued this apprentice very much and had already intended to train him as his successor. Second, the last person Mr. Burke Solomon met was Zhao Jin. Oh. The talkative captive also added, the person Mr. Burke Solomon disliked the most was also this Zhao Jin. Because of these last 2 sentences, Zion Adeo had to focus all his attention on this person named Zhao Jin. Comrade Zhao Jin was very well known on Diamond Star, almost as famous as Burke Solomon. So, Zion Adeo came to him very quickly. Zion Adeo had seen many great people. But outside, there was a big noise. When everyone on the planet was in danger, he could still hug his own quilt, snore, and sleep soundly. Zion Adeo had really encountered it for the first time. How could he possibly invite such an ancestor? Zion Adeo had already backed out before he even started. But before he took a step, the aircraft with the video equipment was right in front of him, drawing circles persistently in a special posture. It drew 3 times, so that he couldn't pretend not to see it. The 3 times were telling the same command, must be taken down. Men, why bother to embarrass men? Isn't it just taking your cabbage? Go, isn't it okay? Zion Adeo thought about his wife who hadn't married yet, and came to Zhao Jin with a bitter face. How to wake up a person who pretends to sleep. Waiting online, very urgent. Just when Zion Adeo was thinking hard, the person lying on the hammock moved. With one hand, he knocked down the aircraft that was about to fly the 4th circle. Not only that, he also muttered, it's so noisy. Looking at the aircraft lying on the ground, motionless, Zion Adeo's eyes flashed with despair. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486 Acting. I didn't do this. Everyone, please testify for me. Zion Adeo's voice changed due to nervousness. Monkey, who was standing by, burst out laughing when he heard this. Instead of worrying about someone blaming you for the destruction of the clairvoyance, you might as well worry about what kind of punishment you will suffer if you fail to wake people up and complete the task. What does it mean that misfortunes never come alone? What does it mean that when it rains, it rains? Zion Adeo completely understood it. Thinking of the tricks that Song Si used against him, Zion Adeo couldn't help but shudder. Look at how you gloat over other people's misfortunes. Are you still a brother? Monkey spread his hands, facing the tricks that Major General Song used to trick people. There is no such thing as a lack of brothers. Monkey's words not only caused Zion Adeo to feel very uncomfortable, but also shocked Zhao Jin, who was lying on the hammock pretending to sleep. Although the alliance is quite large, the major generals are also limited. In Zhao Jin's memory, there was only one general with the surname Song in the alliance, named Song Yuanqi. However, This was before he left the alliance. So many years have passed. If General Song, who had made many contributions, had not died, he should have become a marshal long ago. What was the name of the army led by Song Yuanshi? What army? Expeditionary Army, Zhao Jin asked tentatively, which immediately attracted the attention of Xiao and Monkey. Zhao Jin on the hammock had his eyes closed, as if the 3 words, which were no more than the hum of a mosquito, were just an illusion of Xiao and Monkey. The two looked at each other. Monkey tutted and slowly said, "Our expeditionary army is well known. Even in places where there is no star net signal, we have fans." Hearing Monkey indirectly admitting his identity, Zhao Jin frowned slightly. "The major general you are talking about is Song Yuanshi's son." It was a simple question, but Xiao and Monkey heard a hint of something else. Although he was severely punished by Song Si, it was all internal affairs of the expeditionary army. Hearing that Song Si was questioned, Xiao couldn't help but retort, "Our expeditionary army is not like the Cheyenne Zhou army, which is nepotism. Among the 48 major generals of the alliance, our major general Song Si is not ranked very high, but it is above Patton Field." Zhao Jin didn't care about the ranking of the major generals of the alliance, and he didn't care about the gossip about the Cheyenne Zhou army. But when he heard his name and Patton Field together, Zhao Jin was unhappy. His brows were directly wrinkled into Sichuan character, and he shouted, "My surname is Zhao, not Field. I have nothing to do with the Cheyenne Zhou army." Seeing Zhao Jin hurriedly distancing himself from the Field family, Xiao was very happy. The man in front of him put on an appearance of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. He thought that Major General Song's mission might not be completed. Unexpectedly, after just a few words, this guy couldn't keep his composure. At this time, he didn't forget to mention that his surname was Zhao. Obviously he has a strong sense of pride in this surname. Xiao narrowed his eyes and began his performance while searching for famous people with the surname Zhao in his mind. "You said it doesn't matter? Who are you? There are so many people with the surname Zhao in the alliance. What's so great about it? Give me back my surname Zhao. Why are you showing off?" That superior attitude and that somewhat sarcastic voice perfectly showed his disdain for the surname Zhao. Xiao felt that he could give his performance full marks. Chapter 487 Zhao Jin. Life depends on acting skills. Xiao's hard work successfully angered Zhao Jin. Although there are many people with the surname Zhao in the alliance, there are only a few living on Qin Star. When my Qin Zhao family was established in the alliance, you young children had not yet been reincarnated into your mother's belly. Qin Zhao family. Xiao quickly grasped the key words and narrowed his eyes. Seeing the light brain in the monkey's hand flashing, Xiao spoke lazily, "Qin Zhao family? From your tone, it seems that it should be very powerful. But I have lived in the alliance for so many years, and I have never heard anyone mention it. Maybe I am too ignorant. Otherwise, Mr. Zhao, can you give me a hint?" Xiao's sincere question was like a sharp sword, deeply piercing Zhao Jin's heart. He walked up and grabbed Xiao's collar, his eyes gleaming with ferocity. "You haven't heard of the Qin Zhao family? Then where did your mecha come from?" Xiao slapped Zhao Jin's hand away and curled his lips. "Of course the mecha of my expeditionary army is specially supplied by Tang's mecha." Xiao's matter-of-fact look deeply stimulated Zhao Jin. Back then, the high-quality mechas of the entire alliance were all produced by the Qin Zhao family, and all mecha foundries were proud to learn from Qin. Now, only a few decades later. You really don't know the Qin Zhao family? The Qin Zhao family that casts mechas. Xiao looked at the tears on Zhao Jin's face, and although he felt reluctant, he still nodded slowly. Zhao Jin, who was so powerful just now, seemed to have his backbone pulled out at this moment. He staggered with a dazed look. If Xiao hadn't reacted in time, he would have performed a flat fall on the spot. Xiao looked at Zhao Jin, who looked ashen, and a trace of reluctance flashed through his heart. There are two most powerful mecha foundry companies in the alliance. One is Tang's mecha, which is run by Tang Fan. The other is Zhang's mecha, which is run by Zhang Awei. I really don't know much about the Qin Zhao family. Xiao had been as tactful as possible, but it didn't change Zhao Jin's expression at all. Seeing Zhao Jin fall into dead silence, Xiao, who is always very steady, panicked all of a sudden. He sucked his teeth and turned on his light brain. It was impossible to contact Tang Fan. But he could contact Song Si. A family, not a family. Although SYNOPSIS made a note of it in the little black book and gave him a cold look, SYNOPSIS still got in touch with Tang Fan as he wished. Professional issues should be handled by professionals. SYNOPSIS had never heard of the Qin Zhao family, but Tang Fan knew a lot about it. Thinking about the other party's tone, Tang Fan felt that maybe she should know this legendary Mr. Zhao. She pondered for a moment and made a request to SYNOPSIS give her a photo of this Mr. Zhao. SYNOPSIS usually wouldn't infringe on other people's portrait rights. But is this a normal situation? Of course not. He quietly took a close-up of Mr. Zhao and chose the send button without hesitation. 3 seconds later, Tang Fan got a high-definition picture. Although decades had passed, Zhao Jin's appearance had not changed much, and Tang Fan recognized him at a glance. Soon, a 13-page personal information was transferred through SYNOPSIS' optical brain and came to SYNOPSIS. SYNOPSIS had no way to connect this brilliant resume in front of him with the old man in front of him. With the idea of trying everything possible, SYNOPSIS poked his back teeth and called out cautiously, "Zhao Jin." Chapter 488 Homely. Hearing his name, Zhao Jin raised his head blankly. Such a small, unconscious action indirectly proved Tang Fan's guess. SYNOPSIS looked at Zhao Jin's old face, and then looked at the information on the optical computer, and he felt bad. From a promising young man with high spirits to a dying prisoner in front of him, "Comrade Zhao Jin, what have you done this year?" SYNOPSIS' distorted expression made Monkey, who had been watching the show for a long time and didn't know the correct answer, curious. "Brother, what's wrong?" SYNOPSIS didn't say anything, but just shared the information he had just obtained with Monkey. Monkey read it quickly and almost dropped his jaw. He glanced at Zhao Jin, who was sitting there playing the role of a thinker with his head down, and muttered softly, "You are an elite in the industry and don't want to be a cannon fodder for others. What's the point of this?" "Of course, it's for immortality." Zhao Jin's voice came faintly, with a bit of self-mockery. Monkey and SYNOPSIS looked at each other, and both saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. Neither of them thought that Zhao Jin would answer this question. They did not expect that the answer would be so shocking. Since the birth of mankind, immortality has been the goal that mankind has been pursuing. Although the average life expectancy of humans has been greatly improved from the Earth era to the interstellar era with the advancement of medical technology, there is still a long way to go before immortality. "Have you achieved it?" Monkey asked hurriedly. Zhao Jin did not speak, but only responded with endless silence. Monkey wanted to say something, but he was hit on the head. "Can you speak?" If he could get the method of immortality, would he be so messed up? Zhao Jin looked at the two people in front of him in silence, and the corners of his mouth could not help twitching. The people of this expeditionary army are poisonous. Each one is more speechless than the other. Monkey looked at Zhao Jin's twitching mouth and slapped SYNOPSIS in annoyance. "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't you know that only by seeing through and not speaking out can we be friends?" Zhao Jin's mouth twitched even more, and he didn't want to say a word. But SYNOPSIS didn't intend to let him go. He pulled out a casual posture, sat down slowly next to Zhao Jin, and said casually, "Immortality is probably impossible. Do you have any other goals?" This was the first time Zhao Jin encountered forced deflection and awkward chat. For a while, he really couldn't react. He was led by SYNOPSIS by the nose and answered casually, "Perfect, my beast-type mecha." This time, it was SYNOPSIS' turn to twitch his mouth. The beast-type mecha, which caused an incalculable psychological shadow to him, was actually designed by this dying old man in front of him. Not only that, he also wanted to perfect the thing. SYNOPSIS was in a bad mood, and Monkey couldn't help but shiver. "I think the beast-type mecha is pretty good. How about we study immortality?" "What does it mean that you would rather study immortality than improve the beast-type mecha?" Zhao Jin looked at SYNOPSIS with a look of concern for a fool. SYNOPSIS realized what he said and his face turned red. Fortunately, his skin color was slightly darker, so it was not very obvious. The scene was very awkward for a while. Chapter 489 A Hasty Decision. Just as the two looked at each other, a light sound broke the deathly silence. The eyes of the two people fell on SYNOPSIS' wrist at the same time. The plain black optical brain on his wrist was flashing a dazzling light at this moment. The huge words "boss" on it explained the other party's identity. SYNOPSIS couldn't help rubbing his eyes. For the first time in his life, he doubted whether there was something wrong with his eyes and had hallucinations for no reason. It's not SYNOPSIS' fault that he is not confident. In a place without a star network, how bad the signal is, Anyone who has tried it knows. Sending a message or a picture still has a delay, and Xiao Adao dare not even think about newsletters. Otherwise, when Zhao Jin destroyed the aircraft, Xiao Adao would not be so panicked. Unfortunately, Xiao Adao rubbed his eyes several times in a row, but he couldn't rub these two words out of his eyes. In other words, this communication is most likely from SYNOPSIS. After thinking about this link, Xiao Adao's whole body was like Parkinson's, shaking non-stop. After finally getting through the video call request, SYNOPSIS' expressionless face immediately appeared in front of him. Before Xiao Adao could explain, SYNOPSIS glared at Xiao Adao fiercely, threw down a sentence open location sharing, wait, and hung up the call. Xiao Adao clicked on the location sharing, with a bitter face, waiting for SYNOPSIS' arrival. Zhao Jin looked at Xiao Adao's expression as if his parents had died, and thought about the earth-shattering sentence just now, and asked tentatively, is the kid from the Song family coming? Xiao Adao nodded subconsciously. Zhao Jin suddenly realized When he realized what he had done, Xiao Adao jumped up directly. You old man are so bad, you actually tricked me. Zhao Jin sighed, and said shamelessly, I was deceived, I voluntarily. Xiao Adao was so angry that he was like a Buddha ascending to heaven and two Buddhas were born. Seeing Xiao Adao was so angry that he couldn't speak, Zhao Jin felt a lot better. He looked up at the direction of Weru Star and muttered quietly, the Alliance always says that a son of a rich family should not sit in the hall. I don't know if this kid surnamed Song believes this and has the courage to come. Xiao Adao hadn't finished rolling his eyes when he heard Zhao Jin's words. He almost couldn't breathe. What nonsense are you talking about, old man? There are no people in the expeditionary army who are afraid of death, and there are no people who talk nonsense. My boss told me to wait, and I will come naturally. Xiao Adao's impassioned speech did not arouse Zhao Jin's interest. After staying here for a long time, experiencing a long wait and endless disappointment, Zhao Jin didn't have any good feelings for those big words and cliches. He only believed in the facts in front of him. Xiao Adao's swearing could not compare to the scenery in the direction of Weru Star. That special aircraft takes 2 hours to go back and forth. Zhao Jin decided to give the kid surnamed Song another 2 hours. If the boy surnamed Song came quickly enough, even if he couldn't talk like the other two, he would tell him everything he wanted to know without hesitation. This decision was so hasty. But Zhao Jin felt that there was nothing wrong with it. After all, there were not many people around him who kept their promises. If he missed the boy surnamed Song, he was not sure if he would meet another one in his lifetime. Chapter 490, The Arrival of Flames. Xiao Dao was upset because of Zhao Jin's ignoring attitude. Zhao Jin ignored him, and he was not willing to pay attention to Zhao Jin. The two people who were relatively speechless looked in the direction of Weru Star at the same time. After a while, a black dot rushed from Weru Star to their coordinates at lightning speed. That speed was simply amazing. As the distance got closer and closer, the mecha gradually revealed its hideous appearance. The black fuselage was wrapped with red lines, like clusters of flames burning. Xiao Dao pointed at the mecha and shouted loudly, look, the flames of our Major General. Zhao Jin looked at the approaching flames, raised his eyebrows, and looked down at his light brain. 15 minutes. Much earlier than he expected. This Major General of the Expeditionary Force is a bit interesting. However, the me who came out of the cab, if he was not mistaken, should be a lady. When did the Alliance become so tolerant that it actually allowed the existence of such a young female Major General? Xiao Adao turned his head and took a look, and his expression immediately became particularly difficult to describe. Master Tang, why is it you? Where is my Major General? Tang Fan pointed to the maintenance cabin next to him. Xiao Adao understood immediately and his expression became weird again. Zhao Jin looked at Xiao Adao, then at Tang Fan, smacked his lips, and asked Xiao Adao, is this lady, the master of Tang's mecha? Before Xiao Adao had time to speak, Tang Fan had already stepped forward, tightly shook Zhao Jin's hand, and introduced himself. Hello, senior. I am Tang Fan from Basil Planet. I am currently the master of Tang's mecha, mainly engaged in mecha design and manufacturing. I have read your notes on mecha casting in the early days, which gave me a lot of help. It is my honor to meet you, senior. I hope to have the opportunity to study with you, to further discuss the issue of mecha, to learn more knowledge, and to make great progress. Tang Fan's words directly shocked the four men present. Especially SYNOPSIS, who had just emerged from the maintenance cabin, had an expression that was no different from seeing a ghost. Zhao Jin, who was praised by Tang Fan, couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he saw the girl with a smile like a flower in front of him. Miss Tang, you are too kind. Since you can become the female leader of the metro world of the Alliance, you must have your own strengths. You can't say that you are good at studying. Promote each other. When it comes to speaking official language and using set phrases, classmate Zhao Jin is not bad. Even if they don't know the current strength of the other party, it doesn't prevent them from bragging about each other's business. Seeing that the bragging was getting more and more embarrassing, Tang Fan shamelessly changed the subject. Speaking of which, I have another thing I want to ask Senior Zhao. Zhao Jin glanced at her and smiled. Master Tang, please tell me first. The 4 words "tell me first" are very particular. It means to encourage you not to worry about the future and speak out boldly, but it also does not make any promises to you. As for whether you will agree after you say it, that is not certain. Tang Fan was a fox who had been in the business world for many years, so he could not help but hear the answer. However, he had to ask for help, so he had to bite the bullet and said tactfully, Senior. Do you know where Mr. Burke Solomon ended up? Zhao Jin relaxed his frown a little when he heard this, and nodded imperceptibly. Chapter 491 Detector. Tang Fan's face lit up, and he hurriedly said, Can you be more specific, Senior? Zhao Jin raised his lips and casually uttered 2 words, no. Hearing these 2 decisive words, Tang Fan froze in his place, and he felt terrible. Song Si took a step forward, hiding the shocked Tang Fan behind him, and followed Tang Fan's example, extending his right hand to Zhao Jin. Zhao Jin glanced at him, and stretched out his hand reservedly, gently holding Song Si's fingertips. After a brief contact, Zhao Jin couldn't wait to let go of his hand. That action, that expression, it was as if what he held was not a hand, but a super large virus. Such a small action was particularly annoying. If it wasn't for asking for help, it would be the temper of Major General Song Si. But now, at this moment, what else can Song Si do except endure it? Hello. My name is Song Si, and I'm their commander. Mr. Burke Solomon, whom my companion asked you about just now, is a wanted criminal of the Alliance and one of our mission targets. Any clues provided by Mr. Zhao will help us arrest him as soon as possible and gain the friendship of the expeditionary force. Of course, this is not the jurisdiction of the Alliance, and reporting suspects is not a citizen's obligation. Mr. Zhao has the right to refuse. However, I still hope that Mr. Zhao can give it more consideration. What do you mean by giving it more consideration? The words of this kid surnamed Song are very high-sounding, but is there any room for him to consider? Telling him will gain the friendship of the expeditionary force. Then, what if you don't tell him? Zhao Jin didn't know what others could hear from these words. But he could only hear threats from these words. This feeling is simply amazing. Zhao Jin resisted the urge to curse with his back teeth, and pointed reluctantly in the direction of Burke Solomon's underground laboratory. Song Si looked in the direction Zhao Jin pointed, but he saw nothing except the green matter. Fortunately, Song Si was a reasonable person. He knew that what you see with your eyes is not necessarily the whole truth. He looked at Zhao Jin deeply, smacked his tongue, and took out a small detector from his space buckle. The small detector looked very simple, a hollow ring connected to a long metal handle with a wireless transmitter at the end of the handle. Song Si held the metal handle and let the ring move back and forth about 30 centimeters above the ground. The next second, all the data of 100 meters underground appeared on the optical computer screen in a 3-dimensional image. And the direction of Zhao Jin's finger, under the action of the detector, showed a 3-story underground building of not very large scale. Song Si glanced at it and sneered. It's interesting. Zhao Jin spread his hands and said, believe it if you want, forget it if you don't. Before Song Si could react, Zaya Audio and Monkey surrounded him from the left and right. After watching the 3-dimensional image transmitted by the detector, the two said at the same time, Boss, I'll go. Song Si looked at Zaya Audio, then at Monkey, and squinted his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he finally spoke, you two go together. Be companions. If you encounter any problems, we can discuss it together. Zaya Audio and Monkey looked at each other and nodded at the same time. This matter was decided so hastily. Chapter 492A Family. Zaya Audio and Monkey put on protective clothing, put on gas masks, and walked towards the underground laboratory fully armed. Behind them, Zhao Jin laughed so hard that he fell backwards. Is it that serious? Song Si glanced at him and uttered two words, "So serious." Zhao Jin raised his eyebrows and pretended to listen attentively. Song Si tugged at his sleeves and said slowly, "The Alliance Convention stipulates that large-scale biological or chemical agents cannot be used against civilians. As a soldier of the Alliance, I have always taken it as a criterion." Zhao Jin pointed to the people not far away who had their light brains removed, put on controllers, and were put together. They had not woken up yet, and sneered, "As a Major General of the Alliance, you must be responsible for your words." Song Si sighed and sneered, "Mr. Zhao, are you sure that those lying over there are all citizens of the Alliance protected by the laws of the Alliance?" Zhao Jin was speechless when he heard this. He had been away from the Alliance for so long that he had forgotten that the Alliance had expressly prohibited genetic modification. Once verified, all parties involved in genetic modification will be immediately disqualified from the Alliance and sentenced to life imprisonment. It is true that Song Si used biological agents, but they were used against genetically modified humans. In a sense, Song Si can only be regarded as taking advantage of the loopholes in the Alliance laws, and there is still a long way to go between violating the Alliance laws. In theory, Zhao Jin understands. But psychologically, Zhao Jin still has a different view of Song Si. Major General Song's understanding of the Alliance laws is far beyond our reach. Song Si raised his eyelids and cupped his hands. "Thank you. Thank you. I am greedy, and I can't compare to Mr. Zhao who specializes in one subject. I have also admired Mr. Zhao's talent in mecha for a long time. Especially in the field of beast-type mechas. I don't know where Mr. Zhao got the inspiration from," Major General Song Si asked sincerely, but Zhao Jin's eyes immediately dimmed, as if covered by endless fog. It is said that heroes should not be asked about their origins. But if a mecha inspired by mutant creatures is placed in front of everyone, you need to use an unprecedented method. Zhao Jin pushed his back teeth, deeply feeling Song Si's malice. Hasn't Major General Song already guessed it? Song Si sighed and touched his chin. "Mr. Zhao is joking. I'm not a worm in your stomach. How can I know what you think? Why don't you tell me in detail? If you are worried that I, an outsider, can't understand, you can talk to our Fan." Song Si's insistence made Zhao Jin's eyes split. Doesn't this person know the truth of seeing through but not speaking out? But when the 5 words "are Fan" came out of Song Si's mouth, Zhao Jin's expression changed. He looked at Song Si who was standing in front of Tang Fan, and Tang Fan who was absent-minded and thoughtful behind him, and sneered, "When did Sect Leader Tang become yours? Does Sect Leader Tang know it?" Hearing his name, Tang Fan woke up from his contemplation and looked at Song Si with a puzzled look. Song Si rubbed Tang Fan's head and said evasively, "I said we are a family, but Senior Zhao didn't believe it." Tang Fan looked at Song Si in disbelief. Although he knew he was shameless, he was still refreshed by the family. He blurted out, "Is he addicted to being a cheap brother? Or, is he hinting at something?" Thinking about what happened not long ago, Tang Fan's face slowly turned red. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493, Public and Private Benefits. Without Tang Fan saying anything, Zhao Jin only glanced at her red face, and it was no surprise that he misunderstood. Moreover, he had his own interpretation of Song Si's behavior of starting to attack right away. Looking at Zhao Jin's expression of sudden realization, Tang Fan was speechless. Unable to do anything to Zhao Jin, Tang Fan could only vent his anger on Song Si. Although it was a bit childish to step on her secretly, it was a relief, wasn't it? Of course, if Comrade Zhao Jin didn't show that expression of as expected, she would definitely be happier. No matter how good Song Si's physical fitness was, it was not made of iron. The pain in his foot was clearly transmitted to his mind. Although it was not a big deal for him, in order to make his little girl happy, he still pretended to be grinning and in unbearable pain. Unfortunately, Major General Song's acting skills were poor. Not only did he fail to deceive Tang Fan, but even Zhao Jin, the spectator, showed an expression of shamelessness. Major General Song, it is a taboo for superiors to not distinguish between public and private. Do you know that? Song Si silently took Tang Fan's hand and retorted slowly, "Mr. Zhao, you have not experienced it. So you should not understand the truth that you can have both public and private interests without worries. Songsi flirted with girls while discriminating against singles. He really had both public and private interests without worries. Looking at Tang Fan, who was blushing from being flirted with, and then looking at his golden right hand, Zhao Jin, who had been obsessed with mecha research for most of his life, suffered a 10,000-point critical hit. He stared blankly at the two people showing their affection, and for a moment, he was speechless. Fortunately, the flirted girl did not let Songsi be proud for too long. The hand that was not held by him was very skillfully placed on Songsi's waist, twisted a little bit of flesh, and made a 360-degree rotation. Songsi once again made a grinning expression, but this time, it was more sincere. Zhao Jin's face suddenly had a few more smiles. Just when he finished charging his taunt skill and was ready to go all out, a loud noise interrupted all his plans. Along with the noise, a thick smoke poured out from the direction of Burke Solomon's underground laboratory. Zhao Jin immediately recalled Songsi's earth-shattering as for not long ago, and suddenly felt his face snapping and hurting. Although the Song family kid lacked some integrity, his judgment was still good. How do you know that Burke Solomon would do something in the laboratory? Songsi, who had just fixed the other hand of the little girl and had no time to coax her, heard this and blurted out without thinking, "If I were him, I would do the same. This makes sense." "You are so shameless, does your head Tang know?" Major General Songsi, who was arguing with the little girl, was stunned by this question and stood there, speechless. Taking this opportunity, Tang Fan cleverly broke free from Songsi's restraints and replied with a smile, "Mr. Zhao, you have to believe me, this is the first time I know this too." Songsi was made to laugh and cry by Tang Fan's words. But the reason why the little girl became like this was because he spoiled her. What could he do? Songsi raised his hand and scratched the little girl's straight nose, and scolded with a smile, "Naughty." Zhao Jin on the side couldn't help but burp. There was no way, there was too much dog food, and he was full. "Major General Song, what about the public and private interests you promised?" Songsi pointed to the two people who came out of the thick fog and said nonchalantly, "Aren't they fine?" Chapter 494 Protection. This nonchalant tone deeply shocked Zhao Jin. Before he could organize his words, he saw Songsi carrying Tang Fan and walking straight towards the flames. "Are you deserting the battlefield?" Facing Zhao Jin's questioning, Songsi didn't take it to heart at all. Without turning his head, he said nonchalantly, "I am protecting the citizens of the Alliance. There is nothing wrong with this. After all, the head of Tang's Mecha is also a citizen of the Alliance." However, Zhao Jin had a new understanding of Songsi's shamelessness. Zhao Jin thought this was an excuse for him to desert the battlefield. Unexpectedly, after Songsi stuffed Tang Fan into the maintenance cabin of the Mecha, he did not go in, but put on protective clothing, put on a gas mask, and walked straight towards Xiao and Monkey. Not only Songsi, but wherever Zhao Jin could see, except for him, everyone was fully armed like Songsi. When Zhao Jin finally realized it belatedly and put on protective clothing and gas masks, the thick fog had quickly spread around. The first to bear the brunt were naturally the unprepared captives lying on the ground. The effect of the paralysis potion on these poor children had just subsided, and the effect of the new potion swept over again. Even if they had their optical computers removed and the controllers put on, they were gathered together. Even if they had just gotten rid of the effect of the paralysis potion and just woke up. Even if most of them were of the same gender. They were all under Zhao Jin's nose, without any human ethics, using practical actions to tell Zhao Jin what the potion left by Burke Solomon was. At that moment, Zhao Jin understood the meaning of Songsi's action just now. Before the danger came, Songsi subconsciously stuffed Tang Fan into the Mecha, not only to protect Tang Fan, but also to protect others. When a loved one is hurt, how uncontrollable human beings are, no one knows. Of course, this also shows a problem Songsi and the group of people under him clearly knew what the potion left by Burke Solomon would be. In fact, this understanding existed before the two children who couldn't speak went down. Zhao Jin's face sank, and he said in a cold voice, "Burke Solomon has already used this medicine on you." Songsi sighed and nodded gently. Zhao Jin looked at the head shaking up and down, and the disappointment in his heart gradually turned into despair, and tears slowly climbed up his cheeks. No wonder the Expeditionary Army, which has always followed the rules, actually used biological agents on a strange planet. It turns out that it's just an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Burke Solomon, look at what evil you have done. Song-si glanced at Zhao Jin, who was motionless, curled his lips, turned around to meet Xia Adao and Monkey, and made special gestures that only the Expeditionary Army could understand. Xia Adao quickly responded to his discovery. There was no one in the underground laboratory, all the mechanisms were opened, the difficulty coefficient was 5 stars, and he encountered a medicine attack when he advanced to the 3rd level and was forced to retreat. Song-si poked his back teeth, signaled Xia Adao and Monkey to retreat, protect Tang Fan and Zhao Jin, and then faced the thick fog that was pitch black and headed towards the underground laboratory. Major generals of the Expeditionary Army never rely on their parents' support, but have to learn everything with their own hands. This is true of Song Yuan's poems and lyrics. The 4 words leading by example are engraved in the Song family's bones. There are no cowards in the Song family. Chapter 495 Double Standards. Tang Fan, sitting in the maintenance cabin, looked at Song-si's determined back, and her heart tightened. But she knew that now was not the time to be willful. She took a deep breath, suppressed the discomfort in her heart, clicked on her light brain, pulled to the nearest chat interface, clicked on the familiar avatar, and typed a sentence. When you come back, I will tell you the result of my consideration. The light brain in the hand of the indomitable Song-si Major General Song vibrated slightly, and his footsteps paused. After seeing the line of words on the light brain clearly, he showed his first smile since he set foot on this planet. His slender fingers gently tapped the light brain interface, and a line of words took shape in his hands. He stared at the line of words for a few seconds, curled his lips, and then pressed the send button, and strode towards the underground laboratory. When Song-si's figure disappeared at the entrance of the underground laboratory, Tang Fan's light brain made a buzzing sound. The line of words written by Song-si appeared in front of her. I'm used to being arbitrary and never accepting rebuttals. In an instant, tears blurred Tang Fan's vision. She tapped her optical brain and muttered, this ideal has long been out of fashion for overbearing CEOs. Okay, but these words were not sent to Song-si's optical brain. Let him miss her a little more. Let his belief in coming back alive be stronger and stronger. Only in this way can she carefully examine whether her feelings for him are friendship, family affection, or love. While Tang Fan was thinking about it, Song-si had passed the first 2 levels in one breath through the marks left by the knife and the monkey. Seeing that they were about to reach the place where they failed, Song-si couldn't help but glance at his optical brain. The clean interface gave people the illusion that nothing had happened. Song-si touched his back teeth and his fingers couldn't help but click on the recent call records. His eyes lingered on Tang Fan's last sentence for several times, and after confirming that it was not his illusion, he took a deep breath and moved towards his goal. This level was designed very well. It was not unfair for Xia Adao and Monkey to return home in defeat. Even Song-si had to work hard to crack it. However, this was not the last line of defense left by Burke Solomon. When Song-si pushed open the heavy door, he was greeted by Burke Solomon's real laboratory. Looking at the bodies of various animals, including mutants and humans, in the experimental vessels, Song-si felt an indescribable anger in his heart. He raised his light brain, took a series of photos of these experimental vessels, and then sent them out in real time. As for the target, of course it would not be Tang Fan. Xia Adao and Monkey were the first to bear the brunt, and the other guards were not left behind. These were all first-hand evidence against Burke Solomon and must be preserved. As the guards of the Major General, this group of people had the obligation to preserve the evidence. As for whether they would be scared, they were not his own little girls, so Song-si would not spend so much time to consider their feelings. That's right. Our Major General Song-si is so hypocritical. Since we have come to Burke Solomon's laboratory, even if it is only temporary, it is not without any benefits. In addition to these horrifying corpses, there are also a lot of pharmaceutical materials stored in the laboratory. Although the fine products have been taken away by Burke Solomon, Song-si does not despise the remaining fragments. No matter how small the mosquito leg is, it is still meat. Chapter 496 Unexpected. After becoming free image custodians, Xia Adao and Monkey were once again used for a new purpose, custodians of pharmaceutical materials. All the medicinal materials in Burke Solomon's laboratory were stuffed into their space buckle and then transferred to the flames. Looking at the pile of medicinal materials, Tang Fan immediately understood what Song-si meant. Although Tang Fan was unwilling to be a person who escaped at the last minute, she could not live up to Song-si's kindness and drag everyone down. Under the persuasion of Xiaotao and Monkey, Tang Fan returned to Wei Rui Star with a pile of medicinal materials in a depressed mood. These ordinary medicinal materials were not valued by Tao Qingxi in the past. At this moment, they became a life-saving straw. Based on the medicinal materials in hand, Tao Qingxi made some modifications to the antidote recipe that he had just researched, and barely made 7 antidote potions. However, the materials used in this potion were ordinary, and the effect was far from as good as expected. Although it can barely suppress the physiological impulse caused by the potion, the side effects are also quite obvious: weakness for 3 hours. On the battlefield, every second counts. Being weak for even a second can be fatal. Being weak for 3 hours. That's almost the same as giving up one's life. This potion, in the eyes of many people, is simply useless. It's tasteless to eat, but a pity to throw it away. Even its maker, Tao Qingxi, thinks that this potion is the biggest Waterloo of his life. Only Tang Fan doesn't think so. Potions are like people. As long as they are used in the right place, they can play their greatest value. If you think it's not successful enough, give it to me. Tao Qingxi was stunned for a moment, and really put this batch of potions in Tang Fan's hands. Tang Fan only kept one, and the rest were all loaded into Night Owl, and sent to Diamond Star together with the instructions for use. When the 6 potions arrived at Diamond Star, Songxi had just opened the 5th checkpoint. Looking at the crystal clear potion, standing in the middle of the messy laboratory, facing the many experimental products and the half-open safe, Songxi actually laughed out loud. He accepted Tao Qingxi's labor and Tang Fan's concern, and took Xiaotao and Monkey, who were once again deep in the underground laboratory, and moved deeper into the underground laboratory. The 6th checkpoint, the 7th checkpoint. Songxi moved forward cautiously step by step. When he finally broke through the 9th checkpoint and came to a destroyed short-distance teleportation array, Songxi breathed a sigh of relief. Even though he knew clearly that the possibility of repairing this teleportation array was infinitely close to zero. But at least, it showed the way Burke Solomon left. Songxi turned on his optical brain and scanned the broken teleportation array 360 degrees without dead angles. He had to build a model as quickly as possible to determine the range covered by this short-distance teleportation array. This range must be as accurate as possible. After all, this is not the Alliance's territory. He is unfamiliar with the place and short of manpower. He can save every bit of effort. As an outstanding graduate of the command department of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, Songxi's data analysis ability is naturally not bad. In just a few minutes, the coverage of this short-distance teleportation array appeared on Songxi's optical brain. Unexpectedly, the coverage of this short-distance teleportation array was very small. With Diamond Star as the center, the distance of about 5 light-years covered 13 planets including Wei Rui Star. Chapter 497 White Dwarf. 13 planets, not too many, not too few. With a little force under Songxi's command, it would take at least 10 days or half a month to check them one by one. Therefore, eliminating interference factors became the most important problem facing Songxi. The first to be eliminated, in addition to the Wei Rui Star where they temporarily lived, there was also the small star infinitely close to the edge of the teleportation array. The remaining 11 were in total. Songxi rubbed his temples, feeling overwhelmed. Reluctantly opening the star map, Songxi's eyes involuntarily fell on a white dwarf near the Diamond Star. This kind of planet formed by the ashes of a large star after cooling down is very rare, not to mention in such a remote place, even in the Alliance. Not only that, Songxi also noticed that the core of this planet is made of diamonds. Standing on the Diamond Star, the planet looks like a huge sparkling diamond. Compared with the planet they are on, the white dwarf seems to be more suitable to be called a diamond star. Songxi pursed her lips, took a screenshot of the star map, and then found a place with a good signal and sent the screenshot to Tang Fan. The signal was delayed too long, and Tang Fan received the picture after several minutes. Fortunately, she only looked at it for a second and understood what Songxi meant, and gently drew a circle at the location of the white dwarf. A few minutes later, a night owl with a micro camera set off from Wei Rui Star and headed straight for the white dwarf. Songxi, who had just emerged from the underground laboratory, looked at the small black dot flying over his head, and couldn't help but bend his eyebrows and raise the corners of his mouth. How could his little girl be so smart? It's true that even though she doesn't have the wings of a phoenix, she has a telepathic connection. After returning, I must praise her well. Zion Audio looked at Song Si looking at the sky, smiling, ripplingly, and couldn't help shivering. Boss, what are we going to do next? Speaking of business, Song Si's mouth slightly retracted its arc, and he opened his thin lips and uttered a word. Wait. Zion Audio and Monkey looked at each other, not quite understanding what Song Si meant. So, they turned to look at Song Si. Song Si was stared at by two pairs of eyes, but he was very calm and didn't want to explain at all. Zion Audio and Monkey couldn't do anything about him, so they could only stand on the left and right sides of Song Si. Wait. Zion Audio and Monkey were bored and wanted to stare a hole in Song Si, but Song Si just glanced at the light computer from time to time, without any hurry at all. This wait lasted for 3 hours. When Song Si's light computer vibrated slightly and made a buzzing sound, Zion Audio and Monkey almost jumped for joy. Boss, hurry up. Song Si rolled his eyes at each of them, and then slowly opened the light computer and checked it. The news came from Tang Fan. There were no extra words, only a landscape photo taken from a distance. Zion Audio and Monkey, who were standing behind Song Si, looked at the photo of the white dwarf, confused. They looked at each other, not understanding what the two big guys were talking about. The eyes of seeking explanation fell on Song Si again, but Song Si did not even raise his head. His slender fingers slid across the screen and zoomed in on the photo. His focus was not on the white light on the white dwarf, but on the small shadow under the light. He zoomed in and zoomed in again until the photo was almost blurred, and Song Si finally let it go. Chapter 498 Fireworks. Because of the pixels, Song Si could only judge that it was a row of low buildings, and it was not clear what it was used for. But even so, Song Si was still very satisfied. The existence of buildings means that someone once lived here. Even if it was not Burke Solomon, it still had value. Song Si pursed his lips, asked his men to gather all the captives together, left 12 guards and 1/3 of the paralysis potion, and continued to move towards the white dwarf. Tang Fan was shocked to see the same model of the blaze that Song Si and himself had in the camera of the night owl. Song Si, who always planned before taking action, was so impulsive. Tang Fan was puzzled as to why. Eager to make a contribution? No one in the alliance knew what happened here. Missing home too much? It's not like he was a 3-year-old baby, right? Just when Tang Fan was thinking about it, the enemy had already discovered Song Si, who did not hide his whereabouts. Yes, even Tang Fan, who was hiding in the corner and peeking, discovered Song Si's existence. The other party has been entrenched in this territory for so many years, how could he not discover the whereabouts of Song Si, who was making a big fuss? Do you really think he is blind? Song Si and others have not found the port to anchor yet, and they are hit by the light energy cannon. Song Si didn't take it seriously at all. While dodging the attack with snakeskin, he turned on the light computer modeling. In the busy situation, he still shouted leisurely, "This thing is no worse than fireworks." Although he didn't mention any names, Tang Fan had a strong feeling that this was meant for him. After being said by Song Si, Tang Fan really saw a little bit of Macy beauty in the rays of this ordinary light energy cannon. Faced with Song Si's coquettish operation, the glasses who were almost bald almost fell out of their eyes. What should the commander do when he is still flirting with girls at the critical moment of the battle between the two armies? Waiting online, very urgent. Glass's analytical ability is only slightly higher than Song Si's, but he was distracted for a moment. Song Si on the screen has already commanded Li Yin to set up the light energy cannon and aimed at the first turret he calculated, and hit it hard. As soon as the white light rushed out of the light energy cannon on the shoulder of the mecha, Song Si rolled on the spot and dodged to the side. The next second, the place where Song Si just stayed was greeted by 5 shells at the same time. Song Si sighed and muttered, "You really think highly of me. There are only 5 turrets in total, and not a single shot fell." His voice was not loud, but it was clearly transmitted to the ears of everyone present and Tang Fan and glasses in front of the screen through the mecha's loudspeaker. Obviously in the cruel battlefield, everyone couldn't help but laugh. Song Si sighed and no longer took the risk, but sent the positions of the 2 turrets he had just calculated to Zion Audio and Monkey respectively. With Song Si's previous experience, both of them behaved extra cautiously. Not only did they set up the light energy cannon together, they also counted 1, 2, 3 before pulling the trigger together. Just when the other turrets were in a dilemma, not knowing who to attack, the 2 of them had already followed Song Si's example and rolled away. Half of the 6 turrets were gone, and the enemy's firepower immediately weakened a lot. Song-si and others were obviously at ease. This made Tang Fan's heart, which had been in his throat, fall a little. Chapter 499 Ulakami. In the building that Tang Fan had managed to secretly photograph, a man with white hair, but still tall and straight, with metallic limbs, stared at the screen in front of him, his face as gloomy as water. He had dealt with Song-si countless times while remotely controlling the Skeleton Star Pirates, and he knew that this guy was not an easy person to deal with. But he did not expect that he was already so powerful. Half of the turrets were destroyed before he even got close to Song-si. Ulakami pursed his lips into a straight line and made a difficult decision: start the backup turret. Burke Solomon took 2 steps back, then smiled dryly and whispered, "The activation code of the backup turret is in Zhao Jin's hand," and Zhao Jin was thrown on Diamond Star by him. The short-distance teleportation array on Diamond Star had been destroyed, and they could not break through Song-si's blockade to find Zhao Jin. Even if they found him, it was still unclear whether the abandoned Zhao Jin would tell them the activation code of the backup turret. Ulakami glared at Burke Solomon, who is always more likely to cause trouble than to accomplish anything, and activated the backup plan. "What about the beast-type mecha?" Burke Solomon looked up in surprise. "The mecha needs a human to operate it." Ulakami raised his eyebrows. "So what? Aren't you a human?" Burke Solomon was so frightened by Ulakami that he couldn't speak. Feeling the seriousness in Ulakami's eyes, a sense of fear enveloped Burke Solomon's whole body. He ran towards the door. But just as his hand reached the door handle, the cold needle pierced his skin. He turned his head sharply and watched Ulakami slowly inject a syringe of genetic medicine into his body. Burke Solomon's eyes were bloodshot, and his forehead and neck were swollen with blue veins. His stiff hands tried to pull away Ulakami's hands, but he couldn't stop his movements at all. His whole body began to stiffen and numb as if petrified, saliva slid down the corners of his mouth, and his eyes were full of resentment and unwillingness. After the liquid was fully injected, Burke Solomon could only let his body and brain be completely controlled by the drug no matter how unwilling he was. His meridians kept surging, as if countless insects were rampaging in his body. Some black substances gradually separated from his body, gradually sticking together, and wrapping his body. His body gradually bent, and gradually overlapped with the shells that Song-si saw in the beast-shaped mecha. The reactions recorded in Burke Solomon's optical brain happened to him one by one. It was not until this time that Burke Solomon finally understood the despair of those experimental subjects. Burke Solomon couldn't help but let out a desperate roar. However, what echoed in his ears was the roar of a beast. He had become a complete monster like those experimental subjects. Tears of regret slid down his face, which was no longer visible, and fell to the ground, splashing a little dust. Ulakami stretched out his fingers, caught one of the drops, twisted it, and sneered. "Jim always said, the progress of science always requires some people to make sacrifices. Every time you hear it, you nod. Since you agree with him so much, you should have been mentally prepared. Contribute your own strength to science, Jim, and eternal life." Chapter 500 Tacit Understanding. Ulakami could deceive others, but he could not deceive Burke Solomon, who had followed Jim Field for many years. In fact, they both knew very well that what they were doing for science, for Jim, and for immortality were just a cover. They were all pursuing immortality. For this purpose, they would pay any price. However, Burke Solomon did not have a clear understanding of himself, and his actions were not as fast as Ulakami. The winners are the kings and the losers are the bandits, but that's the way it goes. Seeing Ulakami move him into the beast-type mecha, close the hatch, and press the start button, Burke Solomon knew his fate very well, the same fate as everyone who was stuffed into the beast-type mecha. Either he completed the mission and survived with such a body on his back, or he failed the mission, his spirit broke free of the body, returned to the small container, and became the nutrients of others. If he was lucky, his name would appear on a page of records, and he would be glorified as voluntarily dedicating his life to genetic research, or he would be degraded into the dust and despised as a notorious human experimenter. But more likely, like all living beings, he would be quietly lost in the long river of history. This is what Burke Solomon fears the most and what he is most unwilling to face. Either become famous or be infamous. He, Burke Solomon, as a young genius, will never accept a mediocre life. He wants to be the one that the world looks up to. Before being looked up to by the world, he must survive. 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 This thought has been lingering in Burke Solomon's mind, and under the effect of the potion, it eventually became his obsession. With this obsession, the mecha driven by Burke Solomon did not confront Song Si and the others head-on, but drove towards what he thought was a safer place. That subconscious action inadvertently exposed something. And, unfortunately, it was captured by Song Si, who had already confirmed the location of the fourth turret. Xiaodao, follow-up. Song Si's order was short and urgent, but Xiaodao understood it and followed a beast-type mecha driven by Burke Solomon without hesitation. At the same time, the monkey, who had not received any orders, also moved towards Song Si and filled the gap left by the knife. The so-called tacit understanding is nothing more than that. Major General Song Si was very satisfied with this, but Ulakami on the opposite side was dumbfounded. He didn't have many trump cards in his hand, and Burke Solomon was definitely one of them. Over the years, with a continuous supply of nutrients, Burke Solomon's mental power had long broken through the S level. Under the effect of the potion, combined with a beast-type mecha, he was able to fully exert the strength of the SS level. This strength was enough to crush everyone, including the Union Marshal. Song Si was just a piece of cake. Ulakami thought that if Burke Solomon was released, not to mention defeating the attack organized by Song Si, he could at least contain the opponent. Who knew that Burke Solomon, that guy, didn't even fight a face-to-face, and slipped away without a word. It would have been fine if he slipped away, but he also ran straight to Jim Field's hiding place. Is that a place he can go? Thinking about the consequences of Jim Field being exposed, Ulakami couldn't help but shudder. He quickly activated the self-destruct system of the command center and used the only short-distance teleportation array on the planet to leave this strategically important white dwarf. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.